Lexus has been on a roll recently. Its latest new products feel like a really big step forwards for the brand. Unfortunately, sales in Europe really haven't been going very well at all in the last few years. But we're in Milan today to see a new car which could change all that. This is the all-new Lexus LBX. It's a hybrid SUV, and in this video I'm going to tell you what this has in common with the LFA, what makes it different from the Toyota Yaris Cross, and I'm going to tell you everything else that you need to know about this car. But before we start, if you want to see lots more reviews and reveals like this, subscribe to our channel and go to whatcar.com for a great deal on your next car. Right, so first, what is this car? Well, it is the first Lexus that's been built specifically for Europe, and it's about 4.2 meters long, and the dimensions generally are fairly similar to an Audi Q2, so this is a small SUV that's going to be a rival to other premium small SUVs like the Q2. But underneath this car, it's actually got a lot in common with the Toyota Yaris Cross, because of course Toyota is the parent company of Lexus. There are, though, quite a lot of differences between this and the Yaris Cross. For a start, obviously, it has a very different look, doesn't it? And we heard from the design team here that apparently the first full-scale model they made of the LBX was a complete disaster and no one liked it. So they put it all out the window and went back to the drawing board, ending up with this. And another difference between this and the Yaris Cross is actually in the dimensions. So they're broadly very similar, but the LBX has a slightly bigger distance between the front and rear wheels. It's also got shorter overhangs and a wider track. Another difference is you have a 15mm lower hip point in the LBX, which basically just means you sit slightly lower than you do in the Yaris Cross, and therefore it feels a little bit sportier in here. But the bigger difference, and the main thing to point out, is that this interior is totally different from what you find in the Yaris Cross. So that Toyota is a very good car in lots of areas, but you'd have to say it is a pretty drab interior that you get with that car. Here, it feels really plush, very impressive, with loads of really nice materials, brilliant build quality as you'd expect from Lexus, and you now get a 9.8-inch touchscreen infotainment system, which we've already used on the NX and the RX. This uses the same software. And Lexus used to make terrible infotainment systems that were stupidly complicated, but now their latest systems are so much better. So this, like the systems in the NX, is relatively well laid out and simple. You also still have some physical controls for the climate, which is great. You can also get a 12.3-inch fully digital driver display. There's a head-up display on the options list as well, and even a 13-speaker sound system. There's also a fair amount of storage up front, so you can slide this armrest back to show some cubby holes and a cup holder. You've got this tray under the center console as well, and it just feels like a very nice place to sit, particularly in this small SUV class. This is a very nice interior. Now, we said the distance between the front and rear wheels is slightly longer in the LBX than it is in the Yaris Cross. So that does mean you have a little bit more legroom than you do in the Toyota, but it still feels pretty pokey back here, to be honest. You can see with the driver's seat in my driving position, I don't really have much spare legroom at all, although there is some space under the seat in front for my feet, which is good. If I sit up straight, my head is touching the roof lining here. So if you're 6 foot, it's going to be a real squeeze getting in the back here, which is a bit of a shame. And also, annoyingly, like the Yaris Cross, the rear door openings are very narrow. Another difference between the LBX and the Yaris Cross is in the boot here. So in the Toyota, you get 400 litres of storage capacity, but in the LBX, that drops to 332 litres. Now, apparently the space at the bottom of the boot is the same between the two cars, but because this has a bit more of a sloping roofline, then it's at the top of the boot here where you lose some capacity compared to the Toyota. So it does mean that overall, this boot isn't huge, and compared to an Audi Q2, there's a bit less room in the back of this. But the thing to really bear in mind is that if you go for a 4-wheel drive version of this car, then the capacity drops again to 240 litres, which is actually smaller than what you get in the back of a VW Up. Now, if you are wondering about the LBX name, I can tell you that it stands for Lexus Breakthrough Crossover. And in its press release, Lexus has very proudly announced that this is the first car in its lineup to get 3 letters in its name since the LFA. The LBX unfortunately isn't powered by a 4.8 litre V10, but instead it gets a tweaked version of the hybrid setup that you find in the Yaris Cross. So this is a 3-cylinder 1.5 litre petrol engine, but in the LBX you get 134 brake horsepower, whereas the Yaris Cross gets 115 brake horsepower. So this is a little bit quicker. Another difference is you can have the LBX with front wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. But even if you do go for the 4-wheel drive version, the total system power output is exactly the same as the front wheel drive version. Now, we don't have all the performance specs available for the car just yet, it hasn't been confirmed, but what we do know is that it will do 0 to 62 miles per hour in about 9.2 seconds, which isn't particularly quick. Now, in terms of fuel economy, again, nothing's confirmed for this car, but we already know that the Yaris Cross can be incredibly fuel efficient. And if you want to find out more about the Yaris Cross, then click on the link to watch our full review of that car. Again, this hasn't been confirmed for the LBX, but when it comes to CO2 emissions, Lexus has said that it's hoping all of its models will emit 120 grams per kilometre of CO2 or less. Refinement should also be better inside the LBX compared to the Yaris Cross, because apparently better sound insulation has been used in areas like the wheel arches, the engine bay, and also behind the instrument binnacle to try and make it quieter, more premium feeling compared to the Yaris Cross. There are also other mechanical differences between the two cars, so things like the steering, the front suspension, the CVT have all been tuned differently to make sure there is a difference between those two cars. And even the tyres are larger in the LBX and the alloys are bigger as well. Lexus has big hopes for the LBX, and it really wants this to be the car that delivers a big sales impact here in Europe. We're going to see this on UK roads in March 2024, and in that year Lexus expects to sell more than 25,000 units across Europe. But how much is this thing going to cost? Well, Lexus says it is far too early to have any estimates on a starting price. What we do know is that the Lexus UX, which sits above the LBX, starts at £35,000. The Toyota Yaris Cross starts at around £25,000. So you can imagine that this will probably fit somewhere in the middle. And while the LBX will launch with just one hybrid option, it is possible that a plug-in hybrid version and a fully electric model could follow in the future. Lexus hasn't confirmed anything yet, but with a bit of tweaking here and there, it is possible that the platform the LBX is built on could take those different power options. So that is everything we know so far about the Lexus LBX. Tell us what you think of the car in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel to see lots more new car reveals and reviews, and go to whatcar.com for a great deal on your next car.